everybody? It's 5 o'clock on the East Coast. That means it's time for Stir Crazy, episode number 40. I hope I'm correct with that. No one will save us but us. 39. That's what I said. Episode 39. Y'all heard me. 39, right? 39. No one's going to save us but us, gang. Don't you forget that. It's become more and more obvious that we are out here on our own. If we're going to save our lives, save our livelihoods, it's going to be because the people make it happen, not because of anything coming from your job or coming from the government. We know that, okay? It's so important that we look out for each other in these very trying times. I'm your host, Kim Brown. Coming up today, a lot to talk about on the program. We're going to get into Joe Biden. Remember him, that guy who was supposed to be running against Donald Trump in November? Well, the talk is heating up about who will be Joe Biden's eventual VP running mate. Also, Joe Biden is not interested in courting the Latino vote. Shocker there. And we're going to get into some vintage Joe Biden. I'm talking about 1977 Joe Biden, when Joe Biden didn't really care how racially coded his language was when speaking to the public. This clip is about his take on busing and school integration. And he says some of the most delicious white liberal coded racist things that you can imagine. I mean, it's vintage stuff. You got to stick around to listen to that. Also coming up today, did you know, according to this new study, I believe from Columbia University, they estimate that 38,000 or upwards of 30,000 lives could have been saved had shutdown measures been taken only 2 weeks sooner here in the US before the COVID-19 pandemic really took hold. Can you imagine 30,000 people, almost 40,000 people could still be here right now if we didn't have an incompetent running the whole operation? And we're going to go around the country and take a little snapshot of how workers are dealing with the country reopening. The economy is reopened. Problem is, COVID still out here running wild. So listen, we want to hear from you out in the comments and in the chat. We love y'all. From what I understand, some of y'all be a little rude, but that's okay. Because Big James is as a social media guy, he's bouncing the whole shebang. So we need you to be civil. Mostly, you don't have to, always use polite language, but just be nice, be civil to each other, okay? And now it's time to bring in our great panel. Fan favorite, show favorite. She hosts the radio show By Any Means Necessary on Sputnik Radio. She's also a host and producer here at The Real News, Jacqueline Luqman. And our visuals research producer, Andrew Corkery. I feel as though, Andrew, you are more than that, though. You bring this X factor, this dynamic, this 3D element to The Real News. So I just want you to know that, and I want everybody else out there to know that too. You are more than just your title, sir. You're welcome.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
So, gang, where we're going to start off is with the workers and people who are out here as frontline workers, as essential workers, not only putting their lives on the line, but having to deal with a tremendous amount of ignorance, especially workers of color. Have you seen the video of the FedEx drivers, the two Black gentlemen who were delivering a package? They took a package to the home of a white man. Now, what the two drivers allege happened before the video starts rolling is that one of them walked up to the door to drop off a package because they are FedEx workers. That is their job. And then all of a sudden, the white man allegedly started screaming at the one guy, started to threaten him, said he was going to whoop his ass, all kinds of stuff. Let's take a look at this video in case you haven't seen it.
But you didn't have to come out there cussing me like that, like I'm some child. I ain't no little boy. I'm no little boy. I'll wait till the police come. You can record all you want, bro. I got you. Right there. I got That's you, where his power at right there. That's your power. That's his power. That's where your power at right there. Where you going? Man, I ain't finna waste my time with you. You got my information. You got my information. They'll find me. They'll find me. You need to get your glasses back on. Yeah, I thought you were gonna whoop my ass too.
See, I've seen a different version of that. Not different per se, but I think that one is an edited version, because the version I saw was the black guy standing in the street and the white guy was standing in his driveway. And the black guy was like, you can come right over here and whoop my ass like you said you was going to do. And the black guy basically was trying to get him off of his property to see if he was going to step up and do what he said he was going to do. So this video has definitely went viral, gang. And pop up the tweet where the guy said that they got fired, Dwayne. Yep. So, yes. I asked FedEx spokesperson if they could confirm that his partner had been fired. Here's their response about the conduct. Okay, yeah, but no, the other tweet is the guy who said that they actually got fired. Do you have that other tweet where it says that FedEx asked us to take the video down? No. Okay. Well, anyway, this is FedEx's response, basically. So the two gentlemen were supposedly fired. Now, in response to that, FedEx says, we are aware of the incident in Georgia that led to the release of the two drivers employed by service provider. We are offering employment while investigating to ensure an appropriate outcome. We take seriously allegations of discrimination, retaliation, or improper employment actions. Jackie and Andrew, you know, this doesn't necessarily have to coincide with the coronavirus, but the fact that it is happening during the pandemic sort of compounds it a bit, where I guess Black people are not supposed to go certain places, even if they're working. We saw a video here on Stir Crazy from Oklahoma City where a delivery driver was stopped by residents of a particular neighborhood, would not let him exit the neighborhood until he told them where he was coming from, where he was going, basically saying, show your papers in word if you're going to come around in this neighborhood. Jackie, let me get your take on what you witnessed and the fact that they were fired from FedEx and now FedEx is sort of backing that up a bit.
I mean, this is, first of all, I would like to say that these things happen or they're happening because of coronavirus. But for real, this is how a whole lot of white people treat Black service workers and Latino service workers and other service workers of color all the damn time. Here you got two people in a FedEx truck. I'm assuming that the truck has FedEx emblazoned on the side of it. And you see that the man who was talking is in a FedEx uniform. Now, okay, let's just say they were up to no good. You would think that they would wait until the middle of the damn night where they wouldn't have to go and buy a FedEx uniform and procure a FedEx truck to steal dudes' stinky little packages. But instead, they are actually working for FedEx and they deliver the package to the man's door. They didn't take anything from him. They took the package off the truck, had his name on it, maybe his wife's name on it, put the package on the front door on the front step, rolled out. Dude comes out of the house, according to their story, he comes out of the house yelling, screaming, cussing because a Black man delivered a package to him. I mean, I think the thing that coronavirus has done in these instances is exposed once and for all the disconnection with logic and reality that a whole lot of white people have when Black people come in what they believe is their space. And they feel like they just have a right to treat Black folk, Latino folk, Asian folk, any kind of way they want. And it's compounded by the fact that the immediate response of these men's supervisor or manager or whomever was to fire them and tell them to take the video down. Thank God for social media, because the pressure that was put on FedEx because they were fired is why FedEx had to put out that response, that statement. I mean, this is normal. This is what Black people have to go through all the time just to make a living dealing with some of these people out here. And this is America.
Andrew, this video is not unusual. Like I said, we showed a video from last week, a similar situation, but I've seen a lot of these videos. I've seen a lot of Black delivery drivers be asked who they are, who they work for, because, we've had some break-ins in the neighborhood and they were all wearing UPS uniforms. So, you might be one of them UPS burglars on the loose. Like some of the most ridiculous, flat out racist reasoning to just accost Black people. And I'm sure Jackie has anecdotal stories. I got anecdotal stories out the yin yang of white folks asking me about my whereabouts and where I'm headed and trying to tell me where to go. What is your take on this? Looking at that video and knowing that this is not an unusual experience.
Yeah, it just shows, like Jackie said, once and for all, the privileged, delusional reality of upper and middle class white people. Like, these people are trying to provide you with a service, whether they're Black, white, Asian, Latino, what have you, and you're treating it as a hostile action against your own property. And this kind of exists in the framework of, this is my property ideology, individual rights ideology. And this is sort of the final destination of that, and the culmination of mixing that individualistic American ideology with the inherent racism of our society. And, you put those two together and pops out this video, basically, is my take on it. So I think the interesting thing about it is, like you guys were saying about the social media, I mean, this guy had to be reinstated, and like they're looking at it more thoroughly because of the fact that people demanded action. Like, I'm sure this stuff happened even more, if not at least the same amount, like 20 or 30 years ago. It's just we never heard about it before. So it's important to constantly keep seeing these videos, and the more that they get out, the more we can kind of hold these companies accountable. But at the same time, the companies are only doing this because they have a capitalistic venture and viewpoint on saving their company. They're not doing it out of any sort of like actual moral ethos that subscribes morality and humanization to people that people in white, upper class, middle class communities don't attribute for people of color, unfortunately, in this time that we're living in and historically. So I think that we have to continue to put pressure on these companies, but at the same time, we have to really look at why this exists. And one of the reasons why this happens so much is because we're still segregated to a large extent due to class and racial lines. And so white people don't interact with people of color at the frequency that they need to in order to, holistically try and at least overcome some of these prejudices and the racism that they experience, and that the Black people experience as a result of coming to their communities. So we have to be a more integrated society, and we have to be more holistic in our mindset about how we're going to deal with situations like this if we're going to do anything about it.
Yeah, integration. It has its peaks and its valleys, does it not? From the comments, Black Magic says, if you want to know what people think about you, work retail.
Yup.
She ain't lying.
Facts. No cap on that. No cap.
Never lie.
206 War Eagle says, what's crazy about this situation is that if it gets settled down, the Black guys will somehow have to give ground and admit to their part in the incident. SMH. Yeah, he's not wrong about that. Like, yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't have called them out. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another video.
Stop talking to me.
That's
crazy.
Like victim blaming there, isn't it?
Yeah. There's another video that I saw last week of an incident similar to this, but it involved UPS drivers. And UPS driver, the helper was a Black guy. He was literally pushing a dolly full of packages, big old brown UPS truck behind him. He's got the brown UPS uniform on. White lady comes out of her house, proceeds to get in this man's face and tell him how he looks suspicious. And she's trying to be, I guess, nice about it when he starts filming her and he's saying things like, yo, this is crazy. She's crazy. What kind of crack is she smoking? And she's going on and on about how you look suspicious and my car's been broken into and I live in this house and blah, blah, blah. But the thing that really blew my mind was the driver comes back from delivering one of the packages. Driver was a white guy. The woman starts talking to the white guy, and the driver, who this black guy is a helper for, apologizes to this crazy ass racist white woman for insulting his coworker. Now, companies bear responsibilities for the way they don't back up their employees in instances where employees are abused by customers, because the customer is not always right. But when you work with somebody who has not even a scintilla of sensibility or sensitivity to someone abusing you, and you are going to side with the person who's abusing you, the camera needs to be put down, and me and you need to have a talk about how you not gonna apologize to some racist woman for accusing me of being a, you know what I'm saying? It's like so black people out here just trying to make a living, Latinos, Asian people out here just trying to live. And we never know, one, when we're going to be confronted by these kind of racist white people. And two, we oftentimes don't know if the white people who are in our proximity, who we're around, actually have our back. And you have no idea how much anxiety that causes. It's just,
you never lied.
I mean, I cannot imagine what was going on in that UPS helper's head driving the rest of that route that day with this white dude who apologized to this white woman who came after him.
There are a few things as a black person that are more disappointing than, you know, you being friends or being cool with a white person just to find out y'all wasn't as cool as you thought y'all was. Because when it comes to, listen, that's something that my mother taught me when I was young. Okay. She says, when it comes to white folks, if it comes down between you and them, it's going to be you every time. Okay. Like them white people are going to stick together. That is advice that my mother gave me when I was probably 11, 12, 13 years old. And she ain't lied about that. But I want to move on because there's an incident referencing McDonald's, and I have to confess, like I did not get a chance to watch this video ahead of time, so it will be a surprise to all of us, or some of you may have seen it. So let's roll that Mickey D's vid, shall we?
Please, Mr. Wise, continue.
Up and be a part of the solution instead of the problem. We deserve 15 in a union and benefits like
please mute Mr. Wise's phone.
Thank you, and please.
Okay. I can't contextualize it. I'm so sorry. we're going to keep moving. If we're talking about workers, gang, I'm not sure if you heard about this, but the Ford plant outside of Chicago, Illinois, had been closed for some time because some workers had gotten sick with COVID. But then they decided to reopen. And to quote Jay-Z, grand opening, grand closing. They had not even been open for 2 days before they had to shut it down again because 2 workers tested positive for coronavirus. And I want us to take a look at this report from CBS Chicago. And some of the workers there really articulate a lot of their fears. Let's have a look.
Some of the employees we spoke to say they, of course, are happy to be back at work, finally earning a paycheck again. But some are beginning to ask at what cost to their own health and safety.
I'm worried right now. Exactly right now, I'm worried.
You're going into work?
Yes, I have to.
Timothy Shy, like so many others, made the march into Chicago's Ford assembly plant. It's day 2 of Ford's reopening.
This is the second day and already we're hearing about this.
Shy is talking about his co-worker at Ford Show Center who tested positive for COVID-19 today, temporarily halting production at this part of the facility and the main plant.
And social distancing really doesn't work.
I'm upset that they're bringing us back so soon.
From the social distancing reminders outside to temperature checks and reconfigured workstations inside.
So you're good to go, sir?
Ford providing this video highlighting some of the updated health changes COVID has brought along.
All these people was crowded in on top of each other.
We caught up with employees like Michael Hopper wearing his Ford-issued face mask.
I lost a brother May 6th to the coronavirus.
Hopper, along with others, describe an experience inside the plant that doesn't sound or look like that polished video.
But I clean my own workstation myself.
How our jobs are set up, If one person gets in a hole, that would affect the person behind them.
I just don't feel it's safe enough yet.
Chilling words coming from the employees of Ford Motor Company. They're working in the plant outside of Chicago. And we know Illinois has been one of the hardest hit states with over 100,000 positive coronavirus tests, with, I believe, upwards of 4,000 people that have died. And Governor J.B. Pritzker has been pretty, iron fisted when it comes to reopening his state. He has made some of the more restrictive shelter at home policies, at least relative to a lot of the other governors across the country. Andrew, what happened at the Ford plant is really indicative of what a lot of people are fearful is going to happen across this country, that as jobs reopen, as people start mobilizing and taking public transportation and resuming life so much as normal, so to speak, that in fact, it's definitely going to drive up the number of positive infections. What's your take on what you saw happen there in Chicago?
Yeah, I think basically per the video that Ford provided that was in that news package report, it seems as though Ford is trying to present the image that they're trying to out-tech, the coronavirus, and that just ain't going to work with how, systemic this issue is. Like, they're trying to do all these heat tests and all this like temperature tests and things of like that nature. And it's just, you can't do that, especially like when you're in Cook County or you're outside of Cook County. And, like you just said, Cook County is one of the hardest hit areas in the country right now. And, it's going to have to be shut down for longer. I mean, there's no other option unless it's just, more deaths or shut down is basically the only option at this point. I mean, you're going to have a situation where people are economically forced, to go back to work like those workers just outlined. But the government needs to step in and kind of make sure that those workers are taken care of. And, with, places like Ford and stuff like that getting bailed out, all the automotive companies, GM and everything getting bailed out in 2008, they're going to be hungry for another bailout again. So, as far as I'm concerned, the amount that the public has already invested in these companies is overwhelming from 2008 to now. And granted, they paid back, the loans and things like that. But, this is a public investment that we need to make in our people and surviving and getting through this crisis. And the more and more states like this try to, go back to the normal, how things were, or create a new normal where we can, like I said, out-tech our way out of the coronavirus, you're just going to see more and more issues of people getting sick and more deaths. And the working class, really kind of needs to band together and make sure that their voices are heard and that they can get solidarity with the people and, get covered in all these coronavirus stimulus packages that the Democrats keep putting forward.
Jackie, these are UAW workers. A lot of them are union members. And as you saw in the package, that most of the people that the reporter spoke with were people of color, Black people, a couple of whom said that they had lost family members to COVID-19. And here they are having to return back to work. It really sounded like almost against their will, but out of a necessity for survival. And that's what's kind of fucked up about reopening everything so quickly when we don't really have a grasp or a handle on this virus and how to defeat it, so to speak, because if your job is open, guess what? You can't collect unemployment, right? They're going to make sure that you don't get unemployment benefits. So it's like work or starve or work or die.
Yep. That's exactly what a part of this whole push to reopen is, because the government, federal government, doesn't want to pay benefits to people to make sure we stay home and stay safe and we're able to pay our bills. And the states they're not going to, they know they're not going to get the money from the federal government to do that, to keep the unemployment payments going. I mean, Trump has already said that in the next, and I think Mitch McConnell confirmed also that in the next relief package, there will not be an extension of unemployment benefits in it. And so that this is why they're doing this. Those workers, either their job is probably structured where if they don't go to work, they don't get paid for that day. So they literally cannot afford not to work. And I like what you said, Andrew, about companies thinking they can use technology to outsmart this virus. A part of this comes from looking at what countries like China have done, Vietnam and in other countries where there are these mass temperature checks. Well, that's all good, all fine and good. But those countries also provided resources and services for their citizens that helped them live through the quarantine period. So people didn't have to worry about paying their rent. People didn't have to worry about whether they were going to get food or not because the governments provided support for them in that regard. Testing was widespread and free, and so was treatment. So this country provides none of those things, but it's thinking that it can throw up some temperature screening kiosks and that's going to solve the problem. Aside from that, there is the whole PR propaganda that Ford is doing, where clearly the conditions inside the plant are not reflective of that little slick video that they put out, where you see mostly white people taking their temperature screening and going, yeah, everything's great. But on the line, on the production line, those black and brown and poor white people, they're bunched up in that joint like sardines, having to clean their own workstations. And if they're having to clean their own workstations, then that means that Ford is not providing the materials for the employees to do that. So that's coming out of their own pocket. And these are, like you said, Ford is a union shop. It's a union shop, and the union is powerless to stop what Ford is doing in continuing to put workers at risk. And that's also connected to that McDonald's clip, by the way.
Yeah, I'll just say real quick.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
go
no,
ahead,
sorry.
Andrew.
Okay,
No,
sorry.
no.
Yeah, so basically, like, I think one of the points that you raised, Jacqueline, about Vietnam and China and other places like that, particularly Vietnam, though, is that you have a sense of large public buy-in into the government process and into the integration of the society and how people take care of one another and how the government, steps in to take care of its citizens and provide protocols and all these things. But they also trust the government and they trust their, leaders, and like there's really clear communication between what needs to be done and what the reality they're trying to eventually see is. And so in America, we have this political breakdown where even things like the coronavirus have become entirely politicized, in the sense that, there's all these right-wing protests that are constantly demanding the reopening of the economy and who fundamentally don't believe that this virus is as bad as the tangible reality presents. And so that's the problem. In other countries around the world, and Germany as well, you have a situation where people have mass public buy-in and they understand the cost involved of not dealing with this properly. And in America, you have a divided situation where people don't take into account the gravity of the reality that's presented by this virus. And so you're not going to be able to have, social distancing properly, and you're not going to be able to implement all these policies you need to implement when you don't have the public buy-in that's needed to collectivize society and move it as one towards, getting past this pandemic.
We talk a lot about how the public education system has failed marginalized communities and kids of color, Black kids, especially Indigenous kids also. But damn, the level of ignorance I'm seeing from some of these white folks, public schooling done failed them too, baby, because they're not interested in your science, in your medicine, in your facts. No, I can't wear a mask because HIPAA laws say I don't have to wear a mask. Did you see that silly bitch from yesterday, Jacqueline? No, it wasn't yesterday, but she went to the store and was like so offended that the store manager was actually trying to present to her with options, because they denied her admittance into the store because she didn't want to wear a mask, but they offered to do shopping for her. And she was like, no, it's not good enough. Where? And it's, and listen, if I'm trying not to pick on white people here, because I know it's not just white people, but then y'all need to turn the cameras on some of the Black folks that are being obstinate out here too, because I need to see more of a cross representation of this willful denial of medicine and science, because the videos that are going viral are mostly white Americans of a very specific ilk, and that to me is very telling. But I wanted to move on because it's not just the Ford workers, but it's also people that are working in our food supply chain who are having to deal with untenable working conditions, with their employers not providing enough masks, sanitation, social distancing. And this particular story we're about to see comes from out of Yakima, Washington State, where they grow a lot of produce. We're almost at cherry season. If you like cherries, more often than not, your cherries are coming from Washington State, and chances are they were picked by some of these people we're about to see in the story. But these folks have been protesting for a number of weeks now. The conditions that they have been forced to work under is something that is untenable for them and their health, and they made that pretty clear. Let's take a look.
There's packing houses, there's farm workers, there's people that are deemed essential. However, that treatment and those protections haven't reached them. They're the people that are out harvesting, packaging, selling on food sometimes. So those protections that are really required to protect workers, the community, and the food chain aren't being respected by a lot of the employers. And for them being essential workers, they deserve to be treated as such and not just be treated as disposable.
What is the concern there?
All three of the places that we've been at so far has been the same concerns. Workers are very scared that they're going to get infected with the coronavirus. Many of their coworkers already have come down with COVID-19. However, the company is not doing a good job of supplying them with personal protective equipment, with proper hand sanitizing material, no enforcement of the 6 feet social distancing, things that are required and needed to really stop the spread. There's been instances where workers have gotten sick and the company doesn't disinfect the areas where the worker was at, and everything just continued as normal. So that's really worrisome for the people here. At each of these strikes that we're at, we hear the same thing over and over. Workers are also demanding that if they're going to be put to be working in these conditions, that they deserve some kind of hazard pay. A lot of them are asking for $2 at least and a raise for their for working in these conditions. They're also right now wanting to make sure there is no reprisals against them for taking part in actions like this, especially because they're doing this not because they want to, but it's for their own safety and well-being of them and their family.
Wow. Now, what do those workers have in common with the workers we just saw at the Ford plant, lady and gentleman?
I wonder what it could be. Could it be they're people of color? Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, we interviewed
ding,
on
ding.
By Any Means Necessary. we interviewed Edgar Franks today. Great. I was just, we've been doing a lot of that, interviewing a lot of these frontline workers. We talked to one of the men who are striking in the sanitation workers down in New Orleans last week. We try to do that every week. It's been so humbling talking to workers on the front line who are standing up and fighting against, not just fighting for equality and justice, but they're fighting against massive behemoth companies. And I mean, it's not a matter of not being afraid, because I think a lot of them are, but it's like they have no choice. Either it's like if these companies are going to put in front of these people the ungodly option to work or starve, then these people are like, you know what? Pay us well and protect us, or you suffer. And I'm here for that all the time, every day. I am on the side of the workers. This is also a renewal of the same fight that Cesar Chavez started 55 years ago with the United Farm Workers strikes that ended around the 70s and the early and mid 70s. It's empowering and it's inspiring to see people standing up against these powerful corporations that have exploited them so much. But it just also fills me with rage that we're still having to fight for the same human dignity that we fought for 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We still fighting, y'all. And the only way we're going to win this fight is if we fight together.
Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the problem is that a lot of these companies have such a large power and such a large hold over the food supply and over the food system that we have, and they're so well oiled and integrated into our daily lives because of the expediency at which we have food and the level of ubiquitousness of that food and everything that we come to know in our society. But the problem is that, these people are frontline workers. They are really out there every day putting their lives on the line, and they're not being taken care of as such because there's such a level of dehumanization of people like in the service industry, particularly people of color, that it's almost unfathomable. And I think part of the reason why, in addition to white people just a lot of times being racist and not understanding this, they just can't come to realize like the level of inhumanity that exists, for people of color in particular at these facilities. And they can't really fathom how terrible it is. It's unrelatable to their experience of their livelihoods, of their understanding of the world. And it's unrelatable to the historical idea of what America is that they envision is still exists and provides people with equality and provides people, with livelihoods and things of that nature. So it's not always that people are just inherently like terrible and racist. They don't have the lived experience and knowledge base to empathize and to work in solidarity with people in the service industry, particularly people of color, and that's got to change.
I mean, these companies are basically treating these workers as if they are worth less. And there is no companies without these workers. There is no economy without these workers. And the fact that these companies seem awful comfortable with significant portions of their workforce getting sick, possibly dying, spreading this disease to their family members, and these people and the workers are having to quibble over an extra $2 an hour. I mean, that is nothing. I mean, somebody in the comments, not today, but a different day, said heroes pay. Nah, more like zero pay, right? I mean, that it's pennies, it's crumbs relative to the amount of sacrifice and risk that these people are assuming just to keep the bare minimum of function going for this country. And guys, when we look at how the federal government and of course the White House has handled, botched, bungled this coronavirus response, the story about the CDC in the Atlantic is even more befuddling. So this is reporting from Alexis Madrigal and Robinson Meyer. So what they reported, you all ready for this? I'm going to read this verbatim. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention is conflating the results of two different types of coronavirus tests, distorting several important metrics, providing the country with an inaccurate picture of the state of the pandemic. We've learned that the CDC is making, at best, a debilitating mistake. So what they're doing is they are mixing up the numbers of positive viral tests for COVID-19 and positive tests for the antibodies. Now, this is not a small mistake, okay? The article goes on to say, quote, this is not merely a technical error. States have set quantitative guidelines rather, for reopening their economics based on these flawed data points. Several states, including Pennsylvania, the state with one of the country's largest outbreaks, as well as Texas, Georgia, Vermont, are blending the data in the same way. Virginia likewise mixed viral and antibody test results until last week, but it reversed course and the governor apologized for the practice. Man, good. What are y'all doing up there, down the street? Well, actually, no, CDC is based in Atlanta, so whatever. What? Right. How, Sway? I am confusion behind this. Like, listen, if this is the best America has to offer, oh my God, please deport me tomorrow. Jesus, get me out of here as soon as possible. Andrew, what is your take about how the CDC has been, in short, fucking this up from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's even worse about it for me is that Trump is going to seize this to muddy the waters, because the whole reasoning and the whole ideology behind getting the economy back for him is, getting his numbers up and then making sure that he can get reelected. So at the same time, this is happening, and it allows him to say, "Oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about. They mix up the numbers." You see, so what I'm really saying is that we need to open up the economy, because I know that we can open it up. The scientists, the CDC, they don't know what they're talking about, and in reality, the scientists and the CDC, to a large extent, do know what they're talking about, but they're making some clear mistakes that need to be corrected immediately, and it's impacting not just these states, it's going to impact the whole country, because people, again, it's going to tear at the collective unity that everyone needs to have to stay in this quarantine thing until the end, until we get a vaccine, until we get a situation where it's realistic and humane and healthy for us to open up the economy again. So, I mean, this is a perfect gift to Trump. I mean, I think that, he's going to use this just like he uses anything else to kind of ingratiate himself in this situation, and to allow himself to kind of come on top and say, "Oh yeah, no, I know everything. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Did you hear that story? They screwed up the numbers. They screwed up the numbers. They don't know what they're talking about. Listen to me. Open up the economy. Did you hear Georgia? Georgia looks great." Like he's gonna just seize on this whole moment and say that the scientists don't know anything, and it's really unfortunate, because it's a tangible case of them not preparing this information in the right way, and in what needs to be prepared in the right way, because we need to get back to the way things were, but in a safe manner.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is I'm just hearing some of these right-wing folks learning of this story and saying, "See, I knew they were lying about the numbers. I knew there weren't that many people actually sick. And see, this is why the economy needs to open back up." And you're absolutely right, Andrew. The really messed up thing with this is that this is more proof. Actually, it's more evidence that we do not really know how many people actually have active infections, not how many people have ever had the virus, but how many people have current active infections. That's the problem, because it seems, from what I'm understanding, the CDC was using the positive antibody test results, which indicate that you've ever had the virus. Doesn't mean you have it now, but you have the antibodies of the virus in you from having it at some point. And it could mean that you were never symptomatic, you never got sick, but you have somewhere the virus was in you at some point. That does not mean you are an active carrier of the virus right now. And those are the numbers that it seems to me the CDC was so we don't know how many people actually have the virus. We don't know because we're not testing as much as we should in the first place. And now we don't know because they've mixed up these test results. And at the very end of this article, I was kind of skimming to the end. This is the real problem. It says the intermingling of viral and antibody tests suggests that some of the gains might be illusory. If even a third of the country's gain in testing has come by expanding antibody tests and not viral tests, then the ability to detect an outbreak is much smaller than it seems. This is a mess. And that second wave that's coming, it is going to be a tsunami for a whole lot of reasons. And this is one of them.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Jacqueline. I think that the right wingers are inferring the opposite of this, of what the CDC is doing, which is to say that, we can open it up because all these people that you said were dying aren't dying. No, we don't actually know how many people have this actively, like have the virus actively in them. So, because we don't know that because of testing, we also don't know because the CDC screwed up the data on this. And so it's actually more dangerous than we previously thought and not less. So should take, more time to open up the economy, more time to research, more time to wait in quarantine, while we figure this out and get this shit straight.
90,000 dead. That number is not even accurate within itself. I mean, there's several estimates that believe that is an undercount by somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 20 to 40,000, and that doesn't even count the people who died at home who never were tested at all, but were suspected to have COVID. So,
90,000 people that we know of. That's what it is.
Right.
90,000 people that we know of. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, seriously, gang, like in 20 years ago, would someone be able to tell you that America would have, I mean, I'm not saying fallen so far as an imperialist power. No. Fuck all that. I don't care about that empire shit. I mean, I do, but that's not what I'm talking about here. But in terms of botching scientific medical stuff, like I'm disappointed in America generally, right? But my God,
like 20 years ago, would you have thought that we would have a presidential administration that literally hates science? Like, it doesn't exist, it doesn't matter. What we say goes, science doesn't matter. Now that I wouldn't have seen coming. I gotta admit, I would have seen a whole lot of stuff coming, but not that one. That was a surprise.
It kills me
I'm just waiting for when Trump administration runs out of Jedi mind tricks. Like
thank you. Okay,
that's the
Andrew.
end of it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
just
like these are not the tests you're looking for. Like these are not the tests you're looking for. You need to move on.
Those are not the one.
Yeah. These are not the unemployment numbers you're looking at.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like Donald Trump, and his Space Force, my God, like
he's a Sith Lord, isn't he?
I mean, the manifest destiny of these rich white guys, it never, there's no bounds to it, right? Like, fuck the country, forget your citizens, fuck the people that are even your constituents. Manifest destiny. We got to go colonize space because we're number one in space, according to Trump.
Fuck
right?
all those dead people. Look at this Space Force flag. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Build a colony on the moon, you guys.
Jesus, send the comet. Jesus, send it tomorrow, please.
Oh God.
Well, speaking of Trump and trumping it up per usual. It appears there's a report out of in the Chicago Tribune, but I think it was reported originally in the New York Times. Andrew, I know you took a look at this about Trump doctors massaging the numbers of the COVID to make sure that certain barometers have been met in order to reopen the economy. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this story from the Chicago Tribune is what I would call a case study in all about how if you create the perception, it can be perceived as reality. So the question is what does that reality portend for public health of our country and the world moving forward during the COVID-19 pandemic? So basically the crux of this story is that, Republican political operatives are recruiting, quote, extremely pro-Trump doctors, end quote, to go on television to prescribe, reviving the U.S. economy as quickly as possible without waiting to meet nearly any safety benchmarks proposed by the federal Center for Disease Control and Prevention to slow the spread of the new coronavirus. So the plan was described in a May 11th conference call with a senior staffer for the Trump re-election re-election campaign organized by CNP Action, which is an affiliate of the GOP-aligned Council for National Policy. So that's part of it right there. This is not about numbers, and it's not about reducing the coronavirus deaths. It's about Trump's election. The second part of it is that there was a leaked recording of the hour-long call that was provided to the Associated Press by the Center for Media and Democracy, which is a progressive watchdog group. And basically, they outlined all the things that they said in this meeting about how they're trying to get all these Trump doctors to go on television all around the country and say that everything's fine. So the CNP Action is part of the Save Our Country Coalition, which is this new alliance of conservative think tanks and political committees formed in April to end the lockdowns and to implement a response to the pandemic, they could say. But so a resurgence in the economy is seen as critical for boosting Trump's re-election hopes, and has become, a growing focus of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. So it was a coronavirus task force, but it's actually based on getting Trump reelected. So that's we're dealing with public health, with election numbers, with an election that we might not even have, because we can't actually go out and vote in a safe way, because we saw what happened in Wisconsin, and that was just a Kafkaesque nightmare. So but yeah, and also Trump's defunding the post office, so we can't vote by mail either. So yeah, that's basically what happened.
I mean, so Jackie, in addition to that, Columbia University released a study saying that had the country had taken shutdown measures just a week or two sooner, over 30,000 lives could have been saved. 36,000, I think, is the number. When you hear that, how does that make you feel? Period. How do you feel when you hear that thousands of people died needlessly because capitalism wanted to wring the very last droplets out of it before we had to close things down?
Well, this time, I'm not going to lay this at the feet of capitalism, although capitalism is an evil motherfucking system that is killing us all. But this time, I'm going to lay this one squarely at the feet of Donald Trump and all of his antichrist worshiping sycophants who made excuses for that man and his decisions. Everybody in his cabinet, his Secretary of State, they are Orientalist, anti-communist, Red Scare mongering assholes in the Trump administration who went along with that bullshit travel ban against China. China was the only country the travel ban was implemented against in January. But now now there's a report out that says that the virus that came here came through Europe. So, all of this stuff, with blaming China and it's all China's fault. And in the meantime, the entire month of February, nothing is done to protect people in this country, even though all of these people knew this virus was coming. I mean, it's a virus. You can't stop it from going where people are. So ultimately, I feel like Trump has a lot of blood on his hands. His cabinet have blood on their hands. His supporters who agree with him, who continue to vote for him, who vote for him now, those people who are out there protesting in support of Trump, because a lot of them have Trump 2020 signs. These people were fine, and they still are fine with letting you and me and everybody we know and love be exposed to this virus and potentially die so that they can maintain power, so that their right-wing, white supremacist, antichrist cult leader Donald Trump can remain in the White House for another 4 years. Donald Trump is the head of the white supremacist, right-wing, evangelical death cult in the United States. That's how this whole thing makes me feel, because it's just the truth.
Well, speaking of Donald Trump, got to talk about Joe Biden. Joe Biden.
He's the acolyte.
Here we go.
He's the acolyte of the death cult.
You got to talk about hero to zero.
Jacqueline, he's just death cult light. That's what it is.
Okay,
death cult light. Yeah, he's like Crystal Pepsi or something like that,
There's a lot to start with Joe Biden. So the Biden campaign is campaigning. So they released part of their platform, Joe Biden Loves Jewish People platform, which is fine. He goes on to, this is something that's posted on his website, joebiden.com. He goes on to talk about how the rising levels of anti-Semitism under the Trump administration are unacceptable, 100% correct. The anti-Semitic and racist marches in Charlottesville, the attacks on synagogues in Pittsburgh and other places, no place for it. I don't disagree with any of that. This is where it gets a little murky. He goes on to talk about how he is a staunch ally and partner with Israel. He bragged about how while he was vice president under the Obama administration. He helped to authorize a 10-year, $38 billion defense military aid package to Israel. I'm like, sir, is this something you want to brag about? Is this brag worthy? But he gets into starting to talk shit about BDS. And I want y'all to hear this. So as part of his platform, again, on his website, he says he wants to urge Arab states to move beyond quiet talks and take bolder steps towards normalization with Israel. Oh, okay. Then he says he wants to firmly reject the boycott, divest, sanctions movement, which singles out Israel, home to millions of Jews, and too often veers into anti-Semitism while letting Palestinians off the hook for their choices. I'm sorry, did Palestine choose to be occupied? Was that Palestine's choice? Is that what this is, Joe Biden? I am, again, in confusion. Gang, we are running a little low on time, but I did want to get both of your takes on this, because this seems to be a little bit out of step with the most American liberal Jews. I don't think that there is such a loyalty between American Jewish people and the state of Israel. And I hate when people conflate criticisms of the state of Israel and their policies and how they are oppressing the people of Palestine with anti-Semitism. Those two things are not the same. They are not the same. And for Joe Biden to say that he is rejecting the BDS movement, which is very on brand with establishment Democrats, he is losing portions of the electorate that he would rather have than lose. Jackie, I want to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, the whole demonizing Palestinians is just such a shitty, racist take from Joe Biden. But it's from Joe Biden, so I don't know why anybody's surprised that he has a shitty racist take on oppressed people. I mean, the Palestinian people did not choose, like you said, Kim, to be occupied by U.S.-backed Israeli forces. They didn't choose to have their homes stolen from them by U.S.-backed Israeli forces. The Palestinian people are being punished for a Holocaust that happened to the Jewish people that the Palestinian people had nothing to do with. And the Zionist lobby, and Zionism is a political ideology. It is not Judaism. Those are two separate things. The Zionist lobby has crafted this narrative that Israel, that land belongs to the Jewish people, but it leaves out a whole lot of historical context, like the Palestinians were there for centuries, millennia, thousands of years probably, and Jews and Palestinians lived in that area in peace long before Jews from Europe came and took their land, expelled people. Please look up the Nakba, NAKBA, research the Nakba, and understand what we're talking about here. So when Joe Biden says that BDS singles out Israel, what other country is occupying Palestinians' land? Anybody else?
Nope.
What other country stole those people's homes and made them refugees in their own land and refuses them the internationally recognized right of return to their lands? What other country but the government of Israel is doing that?
Yeah, I would just add on to that. I mean, I feel like Joe Biden's articulation that stifling the BDS movement and providing, millions upon millions of dollars in aid to Israeli, defense corporations and
billions.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
with a B.
Yeah, no, billions with a B. Providing all of that money to Israeli military forces is unconscionable, but it's baked into the American political and military industrial complex. The Palestinian lives do not warrant value in the American capitalist empire system. They're, in fact, lower than a lot of other groups that are already really low in that system. So the fact that, Joe Biden looks at that and says, well, I'm never going to lose points that I'm throwing Palestinians, away with the garbage. Because, basically, this is what's been going on for 70 years. Everyone else has done this. Republicans, Democrats, And so to kind of say that Palestinians have a choice in being occupied is just, it's laughable if it wasn't so inherently violent. Like, it's just inherently terrible, like what the United States is doing. Israel would not be able to get away with nearly as much as they get away with now if it wasn't for US backed support. I mean, every single time there's some sort of, Israeli there's some sort of report about Israeli human rights violations in Palestine, or some report about war crimes against the people of Gaza, by the Israelis. The United States of America shuts it down in the UN, and in the UN Security Council vetoes it with its absolute veto that it has on the council, and protects Israel. The only time that this didn't happen was, when Obama was president at the very end of his term. He came in and he abstained from voting, about the Israeli settlements and the increased settlements and condemning them. He didn't come out and say, oh yeah, no, this isn't what they should be doing. I mean, he did say that in some press briefings, but he didn't tangibly do it with an action in the UN that said, hey, this is wrong. We're going to vote against you in the UN, and everyone else on the Security Council is going to vote against it as well. He abstained and said, this is just bad. The Israelis, they shouldn't be doing this. It's not helpful, to the peace process. But it's like, no, this is the whole reason why we're at this stalemate for the past 70 years, is you refuse to integrate Palestinian people into the holistic nature of this land in any way, and continue to steal land year after year and say that it's not happening. And then use, political Zionism as a tool, to do that, and try to extract, different policy objectives of the Israeli government, and then equate, any criticism of Israel whatsoever with anti-Semitism, which is just completely antithetical to reality.
Yeah, this is why establishment Democrats absolutely suck, because our healthcare system is in shambles, our infrastructure shambles, education system shambles. But Joe Biden, as one of his attributes that he hopes to sell to the American public as to why he should be president, he wants to brag how he gave Israel $38 billion in defense spending. Are you fucking crazy? Like, Israel's not a poor country. Israel's actually a nuclear armed country. They're not even supposed to be, okay? They're not supposed to have nuclear weapons. They do. Israel is straight, okay? They don't need our help defending themselves. They are big boys and girls over there. They got plenty of bombs, jets, rockets. They are perfectly capable of defending themselves, and they can send our 38 billion right back over here and use it to American citizens, because we are lacking. But gang, I want to move along really quick, because when we talk about Joe Biden making shitty racist statements, Joe Biden has been making shitty racist statements since at least 1977. There was a clip floating around today on social media of Joe Biden addressing the media regarding the issue of integration and busing. Let's take a look.
We keep talking about this thing as being North versus South. That's not the issue. It is rural versus urban. And most of the busing that's taken place to date has taken place in rural areas, whether it's be administratively ordered or court ordered. Now we're moving into applying the same standards to urban areas. And it is a standard that doesn't make sense. It doesn't apply. It doesn't hold. We're moving from trying to, in urban areas, we've had integrated facilities but segregated neighborhoods. And in rural areas, we've traditionally had integrated neighborhoods but segregated facilities. And they've applied the same standard and the same test. So this north-south thing is not really the issue. As Professor Nathan Glazer at Harvard has indicated, as Dr. Armour of the Rand Corporation, as James Coleman, as I just held 3 days of hearing, two days of hearings in the Judiciary Committee on another bill I have, beyond this that deals with busing. And there is uniform opinion of those who testified that it is not a north-south, it's an urban-rural question, a distinction.
But no matter what your intent, there are going to be those who say it's a segregated thing, it's a question of race, and that you have set back the movement of desegregation of schools. How would you answer that?
The way I answer that is I predict that the young black leadership of America will overwhelmingly decide with me. I predict that in 1980 and 84, my position will be totally vindicated by the sociologists and by the civil rights advocates. I come from that side of the track. That's where I'm from. I was a defense lawyer. I handle civil rights cases. I sat in on Route 40. I mean, I'm not from the. One way to ensure that you set the civil rights movement in America further back is to continue to push busing. because it's a bankrupt policy. And that's why I think I'll be vindicated. I don't include myself with pro or anti-busing forces. I think the only group that can determine whether or not a constitutional violation exists are the federal courts of the United States of America. No one else has that right. Secondly, a federal court of the United States of America determining a violation of the Constitution with regard to school desegregation cases must find that there is a specific intent to segregate before they can order busing.
A specific intent to segregate. Oh, you mean since white people made it illegal for Black folks to learn how to read as slaves 450 years ago? Joe Biden, is he serious? Jackie, did you hear all that that liberal coded racial language? I mean, it was vintage.
All that damn double speak. Where in the South were there integrated neighborhoods? I'm from the South. That's bullshit. That was bullshit back then. I don't understand. I do understand. I mean, he could sit there in front of an audience full of reporters and spin his bullshit. Nobody's going to challenge him on it. And they didn't. But it was absolute garbage. And this whole busing conversation that Biden had, people need to understand what that busing was a code word for integration. Because kids were riding buses to go to school long before Brown versus Board of Education in rural areas and in the city, and nobody gave a shit. Nobody cared. Busing was something that was done to get kids to school since the 30s, 40s. So when Brown versus Board of Education was decided, then busing was used by white parents who did not want Black kids to be brought to all white schools. The interesting thing is that Brown versus Board of Education was actually a case about busing, about Mr. Brown not wanting his daughter to be bused through an all white neighborhood in order to get to an all Black school, because that's what the law said she had to do. She couldn't go to the closer school that was all white. The law said that she had to be bused to a school that was all Black. So the whole idea, the whole conversation around busing, when white folks talk about they're opposed to busing, what they're really saying is they're opposed to integration. Joe Biden knew that very, very well back then. So he's making all of these verbal acrobatics, all these verbal tricks about, this neighborhood was integrated. It's not about North and South. No, it's not about, in that regard, he was kind of right, even though he lied about integrated neighborhoods in the South. Yeah, it wasn't about North and South. It really was about white people not wanting Black kids to be integrated into their school. And they used busing as the code word to say that in a nice way.
And those white folks have been overwhelmingly successful. I mean, schools are as segregated now as they were at the time that Linda Brown was, having to catch the bus in 1954. Andrew, when you hear Joe Biden say that he will be vindicated in 1980, 1984, he thinks that people will have come around to his way of seeing this issue. Woo, the delusion.
Yeah, I feel like, his version of being vindicated is like, everyone that's it's the same as everyone that's still waiting on the trickle down economics, like to finally get to, like the lower rungs of society. It's not based in reality, and it's just pushing off the time clock for when we have to have a serious, discussion about the fundamental issues of, race and segregation in our society. And so I agree with Jacqueline, especially in the sense that I feel like Biden is trying to out nuance his way and out pontificate his way out of something that is clearly literally black and white. Like it's really difficult to kind of get any sort of semblance of an understanding other than that. And so he's trying to say, well, I know that, the busing people say that what I'm saying makes it seem like it's this way, but I believe in some alternative reality where that doesn't actually have anything to do with anything. So, he's become adaptable at ignoring the reality of situations and, trying to just jam his way in there and say, hey, listen, here's the deal. That's his like favorite go-to thing. I was waiting for him to say that, but I guess that's like a little like nuanced trick that he came up with like in the 2000s. It wasn't, quite ready for prime time in 1978 or whatever. But I think that it's just when people say that, him saying that in 1978 or not, and then whatever he said in the 1970s, that's not applicable now. That's 40 years ago. I hear people say that like all the time. But there's a tangible link between what he believed then and his lack of evolution on policy, on race, on any sort of socialized movement way out of these systemic crises that we're in. And there's a tangible link between him not progressing and him holding those viewpoints back then. So what you'll see is in the coming days, if anyone actually brings this up to him, because actually, there's not a lot of reporters who are asking Biden tough questions. If you look at like the interviews with Nicole Wallace and other people, there are all these fawning interviews that ask him nothing critical, keep it to the most basic rudimentary question imaginable. But if someone actually does, entertain this question to him, you're going to see him do that same mental gymnastics. You're going to be like in a time machine. It's going to be the same thing. He hasn't evolved on this policy. And the tangible reality that people are dealing with is emblematic of that. Like you guys said, the schools are just as segregated as they used to be. There hasn't been any tangible change. So I don't understand what he's really getting at.
Well, speaking of switching it up or evolving on a policy, so to speak, Elizabeth Warren is in contention to be Joe Biden's running mate. She, along with a number of other lawmakers who are, how should I say this nicely, are being a bunch of pick me. Oh, pick me. I'll sell my principles. No, I'll sell my principles more. Liz Warren gave an address to students at the University of Chicago this week where she has, let's say she's amended her position on Medicare for all, something that she hammered Joe Biden on during the debates in the primaries. But now Liz Warren is pivoting, so to speak. Now she says that we'll get to a single payer system eventually, and that we should really focus on trying to improve the Affordable Care Act. Take Liz Warren's comments and then take Stacey Abrams' comments about how she said she believed Joe Biden in regards to his denial of sexual assault allegations made by Tara Reade. And these girls, like I said to you earlier, Jackie, these girls are trying to bust it wide open for Joe Biden, of all people, just willing to sell out their principles about, Medicare for all, and I believe women. All that shit goes out the window if they can get on that VP ticket.
Look, I'm just going to say it. I don't like these women. I don't like them. I'm just going to say it. I don't like them. How many times have I said to people, I fucking told y'all about Elizabeth Warren. I told you that she won't to be trusted. When she was on that debate stage and she accused Bernie Sanders of being a sexist in her slick, sly way, people were like, nah, she didn't really do it. Okay, fine. That's not what you heard. But I know what I saw come out of that woman's mouth. I look, and Stacey Abrams, I feel so ashamed for her. And I'm sure she's not ashamed of herself. And I hate to feel that way about another sister, but come on now. There's wanting the job, and then there is
Motisa. You need your shoe shine, sir. I mean, it's kind of what it.
Come on now. I didn't want to say. I'm trying not to say that word that I say with my friends real close, because that's shaming sex workers, and I don't want to do that. But
okay. Well, there's a couple of 4-letter C words I can think of in that regard.
Starts with a T, sometimes mistaken for, the things that clowns do at birthday parties for kids. But you know what I mean.
Well, hold on. I want to play a really quick clip because I've held y'all in overtime. And Dwayne, is anyone even still watching us? Could you tell me in my ear if we have people watching right now? Okay, people watching. Good. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, good.
I'm quarantine.
Listen, baby, thank y'all. Thank y'all for hanging around in overtime. Oh, play this clip, Dwayne, from it's the Dean Oblada. Life goes on. He's a radio host on Sirius XM. I can't pronounce the man's name. I'm not going to even sit here and act like I can. But Congresswoman Val Demings was on his program, and she expressed a lot of confidence about her chances of being what? Okay. So anyway, so there's a lot of different women clamoring to be part of Joe Biden's campaign. We're going to have that clip for you in a second. But Andrew, I wanted to come to you because Amy Klobuchar, her name is all in the mix again about how Biden is seriously considering her to help deliver some of those Midwestern states. What's your take on Ms. Klobuchar, Vice President?
Yeah, I guess Biden's trying to get like that really unique demo of like extremely centrist soccer mom, Midwesterners. That's like such a key suburban demo for the whole election, I guess, according to Biden. But yeah, I mean, he's also not looking at any of the Latino vote. He's basically written that all off because he can't overcome his tangible policy reality of systematically oppressing people of color. So now he's decided that he's basically going to go with possibly think about Amy Klobuchar and also the governor of Michigan as well, who's another white Midwestern woman. And it's pretty problematic. Amy Klobuchar is about as an extreme Hillary Clinton centrist Democrat as you can possibly get. You're not going to get any sort of fundamental radical change with a Biden-Amy Klobuchar administration. You might prevent a fascist overtaking of the entirety of the federal government by the Trump administration, but you're not going to get any tangible results for progressive change. That's for sure. So, I mean, that's basically my take on Amy Klobuchar. She told this story in one of the debates about her uncle who was a deer hunter, and she was really concerned about him. And she comes up with these weird little monikers like for people in the Midwest. And while these people exist and that's good and we should help support them, it's just leaving out all of these other people who've been systemically suppressed and had prejudice thrusted upon them and economic woes thrusted upon them. So it's you're not going to get any change with Amy Klobuchar, and I'm really hoping that he doesn't go with her.
We have some comments in the comments. Who is this from? This is from Canuck if you buck. I don't know. They say Jim Crow Joe. I love that. Jim Crow Joe is a horrible neoliberal, yet Black folks get shamed into voting for him while he offers nothing for Black folks. Oh my gosh. So let me ask you a question, Jacqueline Luqman. I think I have a pretty good idea where you stand politically, but let me just throw out a hypothetical if I could to you. So you live in a very solidly, reliably blue district. If you lived in a red state or a purple state, if you lived in Virginia, if you lived in Pennsylvania, would you vote for Joe Biden just to try to do what you could do to prevent a second Donald Trump administration?
Look here, if I told you that there is a hole in the ground 400 feet ahead, it's a bottomless pit, don't go down that street, and your dumb ass goes down the street, falls in the hole, and when you get out, you're going to ask me if I'm going to help you avoid another hole? Fuck no, I'm not going to help you. No, I told you. No. We have the government we have it because people in this country refuse to listen to people like me, people who are a lot less radical than me. I mean, just Black folks, Latino folks, other people of color in general, tell people about how horrible this government has been to us for decades. And now people are like surprised that, oh my God, how could this happen? And we're just sitting here like, how could this not? How could this not happen? We were telling you this was coming. So it's like we're expected. We've been on the receiving end of oppression all this time, and we've been ignored. And now that everybody's being oppressed, now we're being told we're the ones who got to save y'all. No, we don't. Nope. No, we don't. Now, Other
That's
people
canceled.
may not
That's
feel
over.
that way. But me, I am going to vote. I am going to exercise my right to vote however I please. And I do not please to vote for Joe Biden.
That's
or
valid.
Donald Trump. Or Donald Trump. You know, because that's always the automatic response. If you say you're not going to vote for Biden, then I guess you're going to vote for Trump. No.
People lack imagination. Okay, so we have the clip ready from Congresswoman Val Demings. She's a cop. Let me just lead with that. She's the police, so I think that actually helps her chances of getting selected by Joe Biden. She was on the Dean Obladiah show, and this is what she had to say.
You're on the short list for Vice President Biden, and I know that it's speculation and all. I mean, have you thought about it? Like, if he were to say, Congressman Demings, would you be my VP? Have you said, well, I'd accept this, I would think about it, or would you rule it out?
Let me tell you something. I am on the short list, and I'm honored to be on the short list. I have dedicated my life to public service. I chose tough jobs. Worked right out of college as a social worker, spent 27 years at the police department, had the honor of serving as the chief of police. Now I'm in Congress. I am trying hard every day to do that job right so we can take care of the people who are struggling in this community the most. If Vice President Biden asked me to serve along with him, I would be honored to do just that. I am still fully and totally committed to making America, my home, the best country that it can be. I'm totally committed to helping America live up to its promise, and we still have lots of work to do.
Dog, she almost said "Make America Great Again."
Got so close to MAGA.
And
It's like, I have done all I can do to kiss all the ass I can to get in a position to kiss the best ass in the world. Jesus Christ. Forgive me.
Which the
Lord,
DNC has figured out is Joe Biden, I guess.
Oh my gosh, these girls, the girls are trying to drop it so low for Joe Biden, for Jim Crow Joe.
Of all the people to have that response for him? Oh, man. Oh.
This is pretty politically calculated, it looks like to me.
Just mildly. That's the problem. It always is, right? I mean, these careerist politicians, and Congresswoman Demings held other positions before being elected to Congress, but I mean, she was a cop, so that disqualifies her immediately in my book. You know what I mean? I'm never gonna vote for the police. No, thank you. I'm good. The police, the same police Joe Biden sent after me and my friends when we were teenagers in the 90s, just because we wanted to blow a little bit of weed. We had to go to jail, fines and all kinds of ridiculous stuff, and the war on crack. I mean, anyway, Joe Biden could never get my vote. I live in a blue state. My state is going to go for Joe Biden regardless. I'm going to write in Ghostface Killer as my write-in ballot for president, and Tony Starks. We gonna keep it pushing all the way and see what happens in November. Even though I'm pretty sure Trump's going to get reelected, but it's not going to be because Black folks didn't come out and vote for Joe Biden. It's because Joe Biden fucking sucks as a candidate, and they knew that going in, and yet this is the decision that they decided to go with. So
they like repeats, so they're going to go with another neoliberal, just like Hillary. The DNC likes to repeat. They're gonna fall in that hole again, Jacqueline. You know they're gonna fall in it.
Same hole, same fucking street. You keep going down it, then you're mad at me when you fall in the hole. I don't know what you want me to do about it.
Well, I think the problem is that the overwhelming media narrative, though, is gonna blame people of color if Trump does get in again.
Absolutely.
And that we're gonna have to deal with holistically when that happens, because that's factually not true. But at the same time, for me, if I lived in a purple state, I would not want to vote for Joe Biden, but I'd be holding my nose so hard going in there, making sure that Donald Trump cannot get back in that White House again, just surely for the environment alone, environmental policy. Now, Joe Biden is he's no amazing environmentalist, but
No.
Trump.
Have you ever ridden through Delaware? You know how stinky
yeah.
Delaware is? Delaware stinks. It stinks.
Oh yeah. My parents live in New Jersey, and I drive through Delaware every other week, and I can go see them. My grandparents live up there, and it does stink when you ride through that sometimes. I can tell you that.
It stinks. The stinkiest little state.
But I will say just real quick though that Biden, for me, I know I come at this from a privileged position as like a white person, but for me, he's a survivable event, which is a problem. He's not survivable for people of color because it's going to be the same business as usual politics that's going on. But just for the environmental policy and not having all of these fossil fuel companies in this administration in the same way that Trump does, that's the only reason, because we're going to be living in a post-apocalyptic dystopian hellscape if we reelect Donald Trump in terms of the environmental policy. And we need to really get a handle on that. And I don't know if Joe Biden's the one to do that, but I sure as hell know that Donald Trump is not.
Gang, we're going to have to leave it right there. Yeah. I'm sorry, Jackie. I feel like I have held y'all captive.
Oh, that's okay.
For the better part of almost 90 minutes. I'd like to thank our panelists, Jacqueline Luqman, Andrew Corkery, always coming with the heat and the flames. I love it. You guys are great, great, great. Don't forget tonight, gang, the live premiere of the newest episode of the Police Accountability Report. It airs live on our YouTube channel at 9 o'clock. Taya Graham, Stephen Janis, always giving y'all the hard-hitting, investigative, journalistic, everything that you need to know about how police are screwing us all on a grand scale and on an individual scale as well. So don't forget, Police Accountability Report tonight, 9 o'clock. That's our show. That's our time. Stir Crazy. I'm Kim Brown. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace. See ya.